Shazam?
Peacemaker. What a joke.
I'm nobody. I came because I have no choice. I came to save my home and the people that I love.
Truth, justice,
the American way.
I'm vengeance.
Hello and welcome to Elseworlds DC Fan Podcast. We're going to be talking Superman and Lois Season 1, a retrospective. And I have with me today Chris from the Multiversal Omnibus. How are you today, Chris?
I am doing really, really okay. I'd like to say I'm doing great today, but I'm just like, just okay today. This is a really good time to talk about the source of hope, Superman, and one of our favorite TV shows. So that'll definitely make my day kick some butt a little bit more.
Awesome. Yeah. So I guess since it's your first time on the show, if you wanted to share some information about yourself, in your Twitter bio, it says, DC Comics fan. What was your gateway into DC Comics, and who's your favorite hero to read or watch?
I know we're talking about Superman today, but I'm a Batman guy first and foremost. And the Arkham games took a liking of Batman and turned them into a diehard obsession. And then at the same time, the Arkham games, you had the Dark Knight trilogy. And so I grew up always liking Batman, but never really getting into comics. And then as an adult, I start just devouring comics. And I'm just like, yes, 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 yes. And it's like all my money is going to comics. Oh no. But it is so much fun. The world that Batman opened up for me, and then the Flash TV show, and then I got into the Flash comics, and then I just kind of branched out to the point where I was like, man, I have a lot of DC comics. I actually feel bad because as much as I like Marvel and like the MCU, I am completely a DC guy in the sense of that's my world. That's the stuff that I'm like super into to like the crazy obsessive level. And it all starts with Batman. And I've gotten really into Superman, and so Batman, Superman, Flash, kind of really my three little gateways of fun, and they each have branch off points. And it's a really great distraction from the real world, and it mirrors the real world in very beautiful ways. And I think the messages you get from each hero and the struggles that they go through with all their villains, I think we can take a little bit of that and put it into the real world. So it's a great distraction, and it is a great outlet for. It's very therapeutic, actually. So I dig it. But Batman, definitely the game, and Arkham especially. The Arkham games especially got me obsessed with Batman.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I grew up a big fan of Batman due to the animated series. And what got me into the Arkham games was that Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill continue their voices in the Arkham games. And I came in late to that. My first Arkham game was Arkham Knight. And then I went backwards and played Asylum and Arkham City when they did the Return to Arkham like double pack.
Yeah, that was a great deal. Yeah.
Yeah. So I liked those, and it was, I can totally see how that would be a great entry point of getting somebody invested, like, oh, I know Batman, and then like playing those and learning, like, because there's so many fun Easter eggs in there and so many like fun side villains. Like, how many people knew Calendar Man if they weren't an apt comic reader, right? Or like like some of those fun characters that you get to run into during playing through the Arkham games.
Oh, absolutely. It builds a world. Do you have a favorite Arkham game out of curiosity?
I see. So this is where I think I will be different than most people. Arkham Knight is my favorite. I know the Batmobile missions are tough for people to get behind, but I think maybe because it was the most open of them, I liked that the most, and I really liked the end that they made for Bruce Wayne and Batman in that story.
It was very powerful. I'll give you that. I have nothing against that. Arkham City to me is just the perfect game, but yeah, you can't go wrong with any of them, and it really does build a whole world, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think, and that's the thing. I think playing them in a different order gave me a little different viewpoint on it, because I'd heard so many people say about Arkham City as being the best, but after I was playing in Night and you have the Batmobile to drive around and you have the full city, going backwards to a more restrictive place in both Asylum and City was a little tougher for me. They're still really great games though, but it's just one of those fun things, I guess, of like, I'm a Pokemon player. I grew up playing Red and Blue, but I can't say they're the best games anymore because they're so, the quality of life features have changed tremendously in the coming games. So
I just realized we're the same age. So Pokemon Red, first game I ever had. So yeah.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was the first Game Boy game, and I was obsessed with it. I always picked Squirtle.
Yeah.
It's the easiest path. It stinks because Charmander's the coolest.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
the
definitely.
easiest path was totally Squirtle. So, but yeah, I just realized we were like, oh God, we're the same age. That's yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I don't. Time is flying by. I don't.
We're old. I don't know. Yeah.
But yeah, so similar to you, I mostly watched the cartoons and the movies, and then I would buy some of the comics, but I would have a tough time like finding the entry point, right? Like Rebirth, when that was in 2016, I bought some of those trades and for Batman, and I was like, I'm gonna read these, but then it felt like I had missed some stuff because I had missed, like it's always like, where do I jump in at, right? Like that can be such a point. So in 2020, before the world shut down, I had an injury. I had an injury to my wrist, and I had to miss like a full week and some of work. That I was like, I'm gonna read. I had Comixology Unlimited, and I had, I think at that point it made me get Marvel Unlimited as well. So, but with the Comixology app, I was like, I'm gonna read. I'm going to go ahead and read Long Halloween and Year One, and reading those stories. And that really, like, I had read Batman comics growing up, but it wasn't as frequent as what I'm doing now, like reading a lot all the time and having these apps where you can just choose these stories to read is pretty awesome, pretty awesome to be able to finally have like, I try to also support my local comic shop. I pick up issues every week. I have some monthlies that I'm subscribed to. But when I'm looking at retro stuff, if it's easier for me to read on the phone, I'll read it there. And then what I do is if I really like that story, I try to find the physical edition of it.
I like that. Yeah, that's a cool way to do that.
I'm trying to make my favorites like on my shelf, because it's hard to buy everything.
Well, I started buying everything, and I ran out of space and I ran out of money. So it's like I was like, this is the amount of money I can justify spending on this.
Yeah.
This is the amount of space I have. And then it's just so now I'm going more digital than I want to. I like the book in my hands. But I think that's really cool because like the best way, in my opinion, to get into comics, just pick a character and then just pick 10 to 15 trades and just hop around. And then pick a continuity you want to start with. That's kind of how I did it. I went to all the classics, read all the top 25 Batman books, and it's like, okay, cool. Now let me pick a continuity, and I started with the Court of Owls and the New 52 Batman.
Right.
And then I was like, I'm going to do this right. So I started with the New 52 Batman, and then I climbed up with the Batgirl, the Nightwing, the Flash. And so it's all kind of had pockets of the New 52. And it's funny because I heard the New 52 was kind of rough. And it's like, well, Batman's fantastic.
Scott Snyder and Greg
and the Flash started off great. And then I realized that the New 52 did get rough because the middle of the Flash New 52 run is just like, okay. And then it gets good again. but it had that horrible patch. But yeah, that's a great way to get into comics. So that's really cool that you do that, and it's really cool that you go to your local comic shop. I feel guilty for not doing it more than I
Yeah.
do. Amazon is actually painfully easy.
Yep.
They don't know how to ship books, but they do get them here quick.
Yeah,
so I do it more than I want.
My local has been able to do a lot of sales recently too, so that's been good. And they have like used comics, like the used trades for 50% off and stuff like that. So if anybody has a local comic shop around, check it out for some deals. Help it out. But I usually try to do whatever the best deal is at times. Like I have all of the Marvel Masterworks of Spider-Man. They have volumes 1 through 23. I have them digitally because every New Year around this time they start doing a $1.99 for each volume of those Marvel Masterworks digitally. So I've picked up a few of those over the course of the last 2 years and have those set aside for, it's easier for like when I'm traveling on planes, when I'm traveling somewhere to be able to have, if I'm in a doctor's office, instead of bringing something, I just open up my phone, can read a quick comic or whatever while I'm waiting. So it's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So what is your favorite movie then for DC, out of not just DC Extended Universe or whatever they're going to call it now, but so far
that's unto itself.
out of all of the DC movies, which one do you find yourself liking the most and maybe revisiting the most?
All right, so I'm kind of torn because I can go in different directions here. I'm gonna say the Batman, Matt Reeves, Robert Pattinson. I hate to be the recency bias guy, but that was comic book Batman in a movie, and it's no strings attached movie. It was not lifting up an entire universe. It wasn't cheaply connected to anything. It was just so entirely a love project for the Batman world, for Gotham, for and the Riddler being interesting. If you make the Riddler interesting, you are an incredibly good writer because the Riddler's only interesting if it's written well. Um, Riddler stories can either go great or they can go horrible, and that was the great. That's exactly what, because Riddler's kind of the weakest of the rogues, in my opinion. To have a good Riddler story, very Batman Zero Year. The Batman, the Batman is the one I keep watching and watching and watching.
That's my favorite Batman movie. I love the Batman so much. He's in costume most of the time. Gotham looks like Gotham, not like Chicago. Like, it is perfect for me. So, yeah.
Nice.
I know what you're all thinking. We talked a lot of Batman there at the beginning, but we are going to talk Superman and Lois here. So you said you started with like, the Arkham games and then finding like the Flash show and stuff. What brought you and when did you find Superman and Lois?
Okay, so I was a huge Arrowverse fan. So they had me hook, line, and sinker, even though they ended up not being part of the Arrowverse, kind of. But I was gonna watch the show one way or the other. But Supergirl actually made me like Superman more, and then Man of Steel I really liked, and I was like, all right, this Kryptonio mythos is something I can get behind. It's something cool. And Superman and Lois is just one of those shows that's incredibly different than everything else. And I found myself going, I can't wait to watch this. A lot of shows, it's like, okay, it's Tuesday. Let's see if the Flash is good this week, because that's hit or miss. And then now it's like with Superman and Lois is like, they're on hiatus again. I'm going to die inside. So when the show is good, you look forward to it. It's good.
Yeah, the breaks kill it though. It really, like, I start off the season like watching every week, and then like the breaks happen, and then sometimes I'm like, I have like 3 to catch up on, but other times I'm like, I haven't watched it in 4 weeks. How many episodes do I have to catch up on? Oh, 1, because there's been like 3 weeks of breaks. So I'm a little different in the sense of I am not a big Arrowverse viewer. I have not watched any of those shows, really. I've watched the Crisis on Infinite Earth episodes. That's it. And I watched those because the Smallville cast was coming back for a small bit of that. So I grew up, and what I really started liking about Superman when I was growing up is I used to watch ABC Family, and they would play reruns of Smallville right after they played their reruns of Dukes of Hazzard. So it'd be like Dukes of Hazzard, then Smallville, and I would watch John Schneider like all night. And that was when I was in high school. I was probably like season 5 or 6 was airing when I'm like a freshman in high school, and I'm watching those. I didn't keep up with it all the time because back then I didn't have a DVR, so you have to actually like tape everything. And then I all caught up with Smallville on DVD after it finished airing. And then I never started watching any of the Arrowverse shows. I was at that point when they announced Green Arrow. I was like, well, it's not Justin Hartley. I'm not going to watch. I was one of those people. And then I heard good things about it, and I just never got around to it. And then, Crisis happened, and I'm like, I'm going to watch all of these. I was completely lost for most of it. And but they had Superman and Lois announced as a show, and I saw the trailer for it, and it completely sold me. And Superman, I always used to say Batman's my favorite DC character, but I find more and more over time that they're completely tied for me for completely different reasons, right? Superman is that beacon of hope that we love. And when I want to feel optimistic, I lean towards Superman a lot. When I want to feel a little bit pessimistic, I guess I lean more towards Batman, even though he is optimistic at times and is a beacon like in the Batman at times. But just kind of my overall thing there is I watched the trailer, thought it looked really good, started watching the show, and I was just blown away by this pilot, which was absolutely incredible and didn't feel like any of the clips I saw of the Arrowverse when people are making fun of it all the time. So I was like, wow, this is like completely different. And I love this show. And I watched the whole first season, and I was like, it was getting to the point where you're like, I hope there is no crossover for me at certain times, because while the crossovers are good for like I enjoyed Crisis and what I saw of it, but I figured out if I'm going to sit back and ever watch The Flash, I'm going to have to know like what episodes are the crossover ones and maybe watch those other parts, right? And to like really pick up on it. And I didn't want that with Superman and Lois. I really want to be able to just like watch this one time, like watch seasons 1, 2, and 3 in a row and not worry about like, oh, I have to watch Flash season 13 or watch, Green Arrow season 8 to understand what's going on in this episode. And now I'm worried about it getting canceled just because all the changes that keep happening.
I hear that.
Anyway, that's how I found this show, and I really, really fell in love with it. And I thought the dynamic of having Superman with 2 kids in high school was just really, really fun. As somebody that's, looking forward to fatherhood, hopefully in the next few years, it's something of, I can now, like, I relate it to Superman when I was watching Smallville because he was a teenager, and now maybe I'm starting to relate to him as a father when that comes down the road. So I like being able to see these 2 different points of Superman's life, and when you have the kids in it too, it feels like a really strong family show. Like, you can watch this with your kids; they're going to understand the kid struggles. You're going to understand the parent struggles. It's just a totally different feeling.
Yeah, I agree 100% with what you said about the entryways for Superman and Lois. And I really found myself like, gosh, I really see where Clark is coming from. I thought, man, Lois Lane is like digging in. There's an episode where she's digging into Jonathan, and I'm just like making him feel like crap, like, only the way a mother can. And then in the same episode, she's trying to heal that relationship back up because she realizes that she has to, be both sides of the mom character, and that I thought was a really powerful moment in season 1. And then I found myself really connecting with Jordan, especially because this guy who always felt a little different. A a guy with sensory issues, his powers start to kick in and he needs headphones on just not to have a migraine. There's a lot that I connected with on a personal level that I don't actually expect to connect to a Superman property that way. Like it caught me by surprise, and it really opened up the world of Superman in a way that just wasn't open for me before the show. It really made me realize that these characters are really relatable, and when you can relate to Superman, who's basically a god among men, that's a really powerful thing. And I enjoyed the show for that. I think it's a very mature show, and it never loses the fun. Every time you think it's getting too heavy, sprinkle a little fun in there. So I'm really happy about the show.
Yeah, so we'll start diving in a little bit more to it here, but this show has been part of what has revitalized my love for the character of Superman, right? Because what I grew up with Superman was the Christopher Reeve films, and I grew up with Clark Kent in Smallville. And what that did for me, right, is with Smallville, it focuses so much on the Clark aspect, not on the Superman aspect. And I feel like a lot of people kind of forget that part, right? Like, and that's what this show focuses a lot on too, is Clark raising his kids. When you look at the Snyder films or something like that, it's more of how this Christ-like figure, right? This God among us. And he's not as relatable in those films because they're not focusing on the human aspect of Clark Kent, which is what we can relate with him on. We may not have superpowers, but we understand maybe how it is to be outcast, right? Within our age group, or and maybe what I find is this Clark is almost very similar to Peter Parker, who's another one of my favorite characters. While they have different power sets and all that, it's the main thing is when there's power, there comes responsibility and doing the right thing. Clark will always do the right thing. Peter's always going to do the right thing. And that's how I feel those characters are very, very similar to each other. And maybe why both of them are, my favorite heroes. But, kind of diving into this show and how they interpret some of these characters. The pilot kind of starts off with us in Metropolis, and the Daily Planet is being bought by Morgan Edge, who is a usual Superman villain. And at this point, you're thinking, all right, he's Morgan Edge. They pull the rug out from you later on in the season, and it's Tal-Rho, right? But they do that twice this season, because they even have the Luthor, right? That is not Lex Luthor, and it is actually John Henry Irons. So they pull that twice this season, and I think actually both times it works. But I think the one that works the most is probably John Henry Irons. I think that he is somebody in this show that was a character I wasn't expecting to like as much as I have. And to the point of I don't like when he's not in the show. And there was a few times in season 2 that we'll get to whenever we cover season 2. But he, is in the hospital, kind of out of commission for a bit. But in this show, in season 1, he kind of starts off antagonistic. He comes from another universe. And I love the reveal when it comes out to be John Henry Irons, who most people know as Steel. And if you haven't watched Superman, if you watched only Superman and Lois and didn't know anything else about Superman, that may not land for you, but he is a huge part of the Death of Superman arc and all that great stuff, and even had his own film starring Shaquille O'Neal, which I have not seen. I have not seen Steel. But
you don't need to.
But I guess I want to just get your thoughts on this twist here of what we thought was going to be a different sort of Lex, but it turns out to be a hero in disguise here of John Henry Irons.
Yeah, John Henry Irons, a lot of the time, shows you the gray area in the show, because he starts off as completely things are white and black. I have to take out Superman. I have to stop him from doing what he did to my world. He comes from the other Earth, and Superman destroyed that world, and he can't seem to wrap his head around it. There even is a point near the end of the season where, and I assume we're doing spoilers because we kind of already have.
Yeah, that's fine.
And it's season 1 too. So, but there's a point near the end of the season where John Henry Irons is literally going with a solar flare, ready to take out Superman, but Superman has quote unquote turned, and he's about to do it, and it's actually Lois who gets to him, and Lois is the reason he doesn't do it. He doesn't take out Superman, and he chooses to see if Superman can win the battle between the mind control. And Superman, he knocks the snot out of him, knocks the sense into him, but he allows Superman not to give up on himself. And I think because Superman at that point was like, you got to do it, you got to do it. And by choosing not to do it, I think he showed the complexity of real life. I think most of the times we have moments like that where we're cut and dry. And the fact that he could see another version of Superman, a person on his Earth that destroyed everything, the fact that he still had hope that Superman could get there, and Lois's love for Clark and his family connected with him, that's incredibly powerful. And I think John Henry Irons is really I just think he brings the gray area into the show in a way where life is uncertain, but there's clarity in that at the same time. And I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but it hits home with me. And I admire his character because people with his zealous usually can't stop themselves when they get on the edge, and they usually do something that they shouldn't do. And he stopped himself. And so, yeah, I'm glad you brought up John Henry Irons because I think he is the underrated MVP of the show.
Yeah, and when you look at his arc, right, is his wife was Lois in the other world, and she dies at Superman's hands, and or eyes, I guess. And what is so powerful about that, right, is he has a version of his wife in front of him who is pleading with him to save the man that she loves, which is not him, right? And how much that must weigh on him of, I don't want to let her down because she's my wife, but it's not her, but she wants me to save this guy who is not me, that she loves. And I can never be with this Lois. It's not the same Lois. So like he's going through so much stuff, being like a fish out of water. I mean, even Sam Lane is his father-in-law in the other universe, and how he has this relationship. But imagine going to another universe and not being able to, seeing somebody that is almost exactly like your significant other, your father-in-law, your mother-in-law, your sister that he was searching for at one point, and not being able to have the same relationship that you have with them in your world. So the fact that he was able to kind of put that aside and actually give Clark the chance to overcome it was just a really great, like, cheering moment, I feel like, in the season.
Absolutely. I think you said that really well. I'm really glad we touched on that.
Yeah. He's like you said, one of the MVPs of the season, I think. He was a lot of fun. The Morgan Edge twist did not work for me as well as that one, but I think in season 2, whenever we talk about that one, it has worked better. I feel like giving him more of the playful, I don't know how I'd say, like, playful rival that he is in season 2 is more apt than just full-on villain in season 1.
He's their Loki. He's the Loki
exactly.
of Superman and Lois.
That is what he is.
He's never going to be trusted fully, and he never should be. But he's never going to be completely bad. One of the things I was really moved by with Morgan Edge was the fact that he thought he was doing the right thing. He thought he was saving his people. He thought he was doing what he was supposed to do, and he was brainwashed a bit by his holographic father. But look, Morgan Edge is not entirely bad. He's not entirely good. That's what makes him a good character. What I don't want them to do is to make him an anti-hero. What I want them to do is always keep him on that edge, and so he's never fully redeems himself, and he's never completely evil.
Yeah, that's well said there. Because he is the Loki, like you said, and he in this season though he is Morgan Edge all the way up until near the end, right? That gets revealed in I think episode 11 or 12, that they finally flip that switch of it being revealed that he is actually Clark's step half brother, Kal-El's half brother. And what I think is really interesting about that is, again, that they were able to successfully do this move twice in the season with both John Henry Irons and Tal Rode, to be able to say this is who they are, and then oops, no, they're not. And to be honest, it worked. It surprised me both times, but I think that what was cool is that they added the Eradicator into this show somehow, and that they were able to pull that off. I wasn't as crazy about the possession of Jordan with Tal's father and all that kind of stuff. But overall, I thought that the arc of the season was really good. I think this is where having 15 episodes instead of like 22 is great. And even more than having like 8, like we see on the Disney Plus shows or Netflix shows now that have like 8 episodes. And it feels like as soon as it gets going, it's ending. And I think we need more shows that have these 13 to 15 episodes, because I think it just, you can pace the season so much better and give a little bit more depth.
I agree with that, but I will say you could tell that this was originally supposed to be 13. And remember, they added the last 2 episodes in because it feels like you have a couple different ends. And it would have been a satisfying end. Season 1, you would have had a satisfying end. And then you see him at the end of the episode and he's grinning. And that would have been a great season cliffhanger. And I think that's what the original plan was. That's my theory. I might be completely wrong, but remember, they added 2 episodes. And I believe a lot of the back half of the last 2 episodes was completely added in when they said, no, we can up the stakes. And I think it worked to an extent, but I also think it led to a little anticlimactic middle ground in between episode 14 and 15.
Yeah, because there was times where you thought this was handled, and then it came back with the Eradicator and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, definitely that was a weakness in season 1, I think, with the 15, with them adding 2 more episodes. But I think in season 2, which I don't really want to talk about right now, but I think they knew ahead of time they were getting 15. So I think that worked a little better in that.
I agree with that. I think season 2 was a more one piece, thought up at the same time story.
Yeah.
And I think season 1, I think they knew exactly where they wanted to go, but they didn't exactly have the end lockdown, pin and key while they were doing it.
And I was just trying to look to see how many season 3 have, but I can't find an answer on that. So probably 15 is what I would assume.
My question is how many weeks in between those episodes will be, because they can't kill the momentum of the show. Because honestly, if the show gets canceled, one of the reasons it's going to get canceled, no one can have the chance to talk about it because it drops on HBO Max, and no one even knew the season was over because there was 500 weeks in between. It was ridiculous. Kill the momentum.
Season 1 ended in August and season 2 ended in June, which are not typical for TV.
Look at how much conversation Peacemaker started.
Yep.
Because it was a week-to-week thing, and people started at different points, and they started binging those episodes, and there was weekly conversation. Oh, have you seen Peacemaker yet? my brother, who's not as into this as me, texted me before I even texted him, be like, "Hey, did you see Peacemaker yet?" He spoiled a couple of the jokes for me because he was so excited. Week to week episodes, I think, are really important in this day and age. I think the binge model is kind of dying. I think week to week is very important because you get that momentum going. And this show has absolutely no momentum. And I think it killed their chance to have the fan base that the show should have.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And I'm thinking maybe they will have not as many breaks because they are starting later than usual. So they started filming in September, and this is not premiering until March. So they should have quite a few. They should be wrapping up the season by the time that they're airing probably the first 4 episodes, I would think, which means
Right.
that we should be pretty good with hopefully limited breaks. I know season 1 had breaks due to, I think, COVID issues.
But they blame COVID for season 2 too. This is the first season. That excuse really isn't going to fly as well.
Yeah. I don't think this will have as many problems. So I'm hoping it goes pretty well. I mean, season 1 started off really hot. First 5 episodes, there was no breaks. And then it had almost a 2-month break, March 23rd to May 18th. And then it goes May 25th, June 1st, June 8th, June 15th, June 22nd, then takes another break until July 13th, then went July 20th. Then for the finale, this is where you talk about momentum. For the finale, July 20th to August 17th for season 1. That's almost a full month just to get one last episode.
That's criminal. And by the time most people see the season finale, they don't remember the rest of the season. It's absolutely criminal to me. The CW wonders why it goes out of business and then it does things like this. I mean, look, I'm as big of a CW defender as you get. I told you I'm an Arrowverse fan, but this business model is so 20. It's so 2003. Just stop it.
Yeah, season 2 had actually it was a little better on the breaks, but it started January 11th. It doesn't feel like it was, but it was. January 11th, 18th, and 25th had episodes. They had episodes February 1st. Then we had a break until the 22nd. Then we go March 1st, March 8th, March 22nd, March 29th, and then a month break here till April 26th, May 3rd. Another break until May 31st, then June 7th, June 21st, and June 28th. So in that case, it wasn't as egregious, but it was still bad. And what happens is I end up, like I said at the beginning of the show, I end up starting watching week to week. And then when we hit some of those breaks, I watch with my wife. So it's also like, then I have to, we have to sit down and be like, okay, when do you want to watch this? And we start watching other shows in the meantime of the breaks, like binging other shows. And you're like, well, we got to flip back now to this show. And it's just so much easier to have to know, like every, what is it, Wednesday now or Tuesday, whatever day it's going to be for next season. That day we sit down and watch this show. If it can keep to a weekly schedule or with maybe 1 to 2 week breaks, not like a month or 2 like they've been having, I think that'll help tremendously. And it's Tuesdays. It is Tuesdays this season.
Cool. I like to set the DVR, start the episode 10 to 15 minutes late, and that's the way to do it. I like to watch it that day because I find myself catching things on Twitter the next day, being like, I should have watched the episode.
Yeah, that's the bad thing about following some of these accounts is then I get spoiled on stuff.
But so we want to follow it because we're into it.
Yes.
But then it's also like we're shooting ourselves for following it. It's really interesting.
Yeah, and then avoid the subreddit if you can at times because so many people are so negative about the show.
I very, very rarely get on Reddit. I once shared an article of mine, a football article, and someone responded that my writing was akin to an abortion in the cold of winter at a Cleveland Browns game. And at that point, I said, yeah, no more Reddit. I'm done. Occasionally I'll look at it, but I never interact because I was just like, they had the first off, I still don't know what to take from that. Like
Right.
I'm like, okay. And secondly, they had the gall to just send that without like. Oh, I think there was even an LOL smiley face at the end,
Oh my
just
God.
for kicks. So, Reddit is a dangerous place. Reddit
Yeah.
is like Facebook with no monitor,
Yeah.
because they're the monitors, but they're all in the same like icky. Like
Wavelength.
you got to find a great Reddit, like a subreddit, and they're hard to find. So I just stopped trying.
Yeah, see, like season 1, everybody was very positive, and then I went on there for season 2, and I'd be very excited after an episode. I was like, "Oh, that's pretty good," and people were like, "This is awful." I was like, "Okay, maybe I'm not coming here after every episode because
Yeah.
it is like, can't we just enjoy it?" But I guess not. So another thing I want to talk about with this was another switcheroo that they pulled on this show. In the comics, Jonathan Kent is the son, the only son, and he has powers. And this one, they made it look like Jonathan was going to have powers, but it ends up being Jordan. And I like that because my name is Jordan, so I felt really validated by that choice. But two, that works out in their favor right now because the actor who plays Jonathan has moved on from the role and has been recast. So if it had been the kid with powers, that would have been a little bit of a bigger switch.
Yeah, I think what they did with Jordan was very smart because, again, I think the first thing you see when they move to Smallville is Jonathan throwing the football through the tire, and you're like, oh, he's the guy with powers. And because every every Superman uh, kid thing is just like, oh, he did something cool with a football or something. Or, oh, look how strong he is. So they did the switch there. I think Jordan was really cool because, you know, the social anxiety thing. And I like it when you have a character who has a, a problem that's not very visible, because I think there's a lot of things like that that a lot of people relate to. And to give him the powers and to him to come into himself, I think that was really cool. And that's what connected me to the show more than anything. I think Jordan is the stroke of genius of the show. They get to have their cake with Jonathan Kent and eat it too. They don't have to follow. It doesn't, because if you did Jonathan Kent, you're almost stuck with making Jonathan Kent from the comics.
Right.
You do Jordan, you can do your own thing because we've never seen him with twin high school boys. So this is his own world. I really love what they did with Jordan, and I think the actor got better as season one went on. I think you could tell. I think it was like halfway through season one. It's like this guy gets it. Okay, the beginning it was like tone it down just a notch. You're almost there, and line delivery was a little better. I really like what they did with Jordan. I always thought Jonathan was kind of the heel of the show. Um, it just he seemed like the third wheel in the family. But I did like how he had his. They made the connection that him and Lois connected more than him and Clark, and I think that's how families kind of work. You know, I am much more like my mom. My brother is much more like my dad. I think that's how families realistically work, and I think the family aspects are really good in that. But Jordan, I think, was the stroke of genius. It gave them the freedom to play in whatever sandbox they wanted.
Yeah, and I think what's, like you said, what's really cool about that is how people keep wondering when Jordan's going to get powers or Jonathan's going to get powers, and I think only if they run out of ideas is when he gets powers. Because
So you're saying that's the jump the shark moment of the show?
I think so, unless they pull it off. And the only reason I say that is because having one kid without powers and one kid with is so much more interesting than having two kids with powers, because it gives that bridge to Lois, like you said, and how they did throughout season 1 and 2 of, I know what it's like to be with somebody with powers, Lois saying that, and like but she can still do just as much as Superman. And that's what she's kind of telling Jonathan, because we see that in season 1 when she's able to convince John Henry Irons not to take out Clark and to give him that sliver of a chance to come back from it, and he does, is something that, you know, not everybody's able to do. And the fact that he takes after his mother more is so much more interesting than if he just gets powers one day. because there's so much more drama to be mined from I wish I was as strong as my brother. And the fact that he is the jock and he is the one that is usually seen as the more typical strong one over Jordan, but guess what? He's not, right? Like he is not physically able to match him at those skills. And what it leads to in season 2 is him trying to get powers, right? And we also see like an alternate universe where he does. And what's cool about that, like you said, with them not picking Jonathan, is that this doesn't have to be the comics. You know, for anybody that's always like, this needs to be this way because the comics did it, it doesn't always work that way, because the way I always interpret it is these are all different adaptations, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a multiverse. We know that. So they all can have different Elseworlds type things, which is what the show is named after. But, you know, having totally different interpretations is way more interesting than just having the same interpretation from the mainline continuity of the comics.
Yeah, I really like what you said there. And I think the biggest thing with this is I want to stress I really like what they do with the comics with Jonathan Kent, but it's so nice to be surprised by the show. This show has this habit of giving me all the Superman mythos, giving me all the things I love about Superman from the comics, and then giving me something different too.
Exactly. No, that's perfect, because what you said there is we still want to be surprised as viewers, right? We don't want to just think, well, I already read the comics, I already know what happens. If I want that, I'll just read it, right? Like I don't need to see it then. I can just read the thing. Same thing, like when we get into these arguments that people had about like Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, Tom Holland, and stuff like that, and it's like all of them are valid, right? Like, because they all exist in this grand multiverse, and we don't need it to all be the same way each time, you know? Is kind of how I look at it. Same thing with like Batmans and stuff. If people are wanting more of a Keaton vibe, well, we're going to get Keaton and Flash, right? And then we can get Robert Pattinson as Batman and his standalones, and whatever then they do with the DCU and who's going to be Batman going forward, I guess. But yeah, just they're not going to be able to cover all of these villains in like one franchise. So you have to be able to allow interpretations for different things. You know, like I see some people say like Marvel wastes a villain like Shocker, right, in Homecoming. But I'm like, he was never going to get a film with Shocker as the main villain. So being able to see him at all is cool. Like
every time we get something, it's like, oh, they went there. Like one of the things, my favorite things is a comic book movie, and I think this is why I like DC more than I like Marvel, is because I get the Easter eggs, or I get the thing, and I just a little smile, because yeah, they rewarded me for being a fan. I enjoy when they do that. This is the reason I love the Batman. I'm like, okay, in less than 20 minutes, they pull directly from The Long Halloween and Hush at the same time. It's like, God, and it's my world. It's the world that I go to when I need to get away from the real world. It's great. I love what they're doing. I just give me all the creativity that you can. And anytime I see a character, it's like, yes, we got that character. We should celebrate every superhero product, whether it's good or bad, because for somebody that did something, that checked a box. And I feel like we need to pin these against each other less and celebrate them more. I don't really love the X-Men Fox films. They're not, but it's not like I'm going to be like, oh man, you're so into Hugh Jackman Wolverine. What's wrong with you? No, I don't do that. I just let you enjoy Hugh Jackman Wolverine.
Right.
That's kind of where I'm going with this. Is it's just enjoy it all, and Superman and Lois just lets everybody win. The Snyderverse, I love Man of Steel. I love Henry Cavill Superman, but there were so many times where it's just like, but we need more Clark. We need more Clark, and this show has a great balance. He's Superman, They don't take away from Superman, and yet we still get a lot of Clark. And the heart of the character is what's relatable. And the fact that this show has that balance, absolutely perfect. So all the creativity, multiverse stuff you can give me, chef's kiss, it's perfect.
The effects have been really good for this show too. This is like, being able to see Superman. I didn't think when I saw Superman and Lois as a thing and they moved to the Smallville for the farm, I'm like, we're not going to see Superman that much. But how much we get to see him, we get at least 1 or 2 scenes an episode of him saving people, which is just perfect.
You'll just hear him, you'll see him hear something, and all of a sudden he's in China lifting up a bridge. That's just awesome. A lot of the CW shows, it's like, oh, they did enough money for Powers this week. But that's, again, I love the Arrowverse, so I can make fun of it, but I try to protect it. But yeah, Superman and Lois, there's so much Superman. And we get little things. It's little things of Powers, like he just hears the truck coming from down the road, and he's like, "Oh, your dad's here," and he's angry, or your dad's here and he's been in better moods. Like that's just like, oh, he's on the phone with somebody, and he can tell you who he's on the phone with. Little things like that are really cool. I think that one of the coolest things was when Jordan was trying to find him when Superman got taken, and Jordan's trying to find him, and he's like, "Well, what's the farthest you can go?" And he's like, "I think Australia or New Zealand. I can't make out the accents." And he's like, Jonathan's like, "Hey man, what the heck?" And he's like, "Dude, I just got these powers good enough so I don't have to have my headphones on without a migraine."
Right.
And it's just like God, it's so cool. And then the light bulb goes when he hears Jonathan. Oh no, Jordan. I'm sorry, Jordan. And and you see it's Dad. I gotta find him. And then they go. They don't go to the DOD. They go to Mom, and they say, "Mom, we have to talk. It's important." And it's just the coolest thing. I have a question for you, and I want to know: is this the best Lois Lane we have ever gotten? Because I genuinely believe it is.
I would say I would say probably yes. On that case, she is like, I have a soft spot for Erica Durance as Lois Lane from Smallville, but for a while she wasn't really Lois. Like she wasn't a journalist for however long, right? Like this is Lois at her peak of being a world famous writer and journalist, and actually like affecting stuff through her journalism and being a good sidekick to Superman. Like in Smallville, she's friends with Clark. She does some journalism later. She doesn't know he's Superman, right? Like that's before he's Superman. So this is like the perfect like Superman and Lois pairing I think we've had, because Lois barely plays a role in Man of Steel and,
Amy
BVS.
Adams was wasted in those movies. Absolutely wasted. Again, I find myself defending these properties. If you can't tell if it's DC, I tend to find something that I love in it, and I love it for that. But yeah, Amy Adams was wasted in Man of Steel and BVS. I will say this. There are 4 things I love about Elizabeth Tulloch's Lois Lane. The first thing is, I would be more afraid of her if I was Jonathan or Jordan than Superman.
Yeah.
My dad. What? That's insane. That's cool. Number 2 is she's assertive without being a jerk. She is confident. She's fully who she is. She believes what she's doing, and she has ideals that lift the whole family. Superman's ideals are actually kind of formed by his love for Lois and what she has instilled in him. And I think you get a perfect merging of the mom, Pa Kent, and Lois becoming who Superman is. Because Superman's always about the people, right? The people in his life. And I think Lois is really a rock for Superman in this. And then again, the thing I love about it though is that this Lois Lane literally has the right line for everything. She has great perspective. There's a great episode where she's like mad at Clark because Clark broke a promise to her, but she can't be mad at him because he was saving the world, being Superman.
Right.
So she's like she's mad at him, but she's not mad at him, and it's so realistic. I think Lois just comes off as a real confident, knows who she is person, and that to me, I think she is the only Lois that's been given full agency outside of Superman. The fact that she's her own person, I think is really important because when a lot of these characters just become love interests, and it's just the fact that they're not doing that. There are episodes that are Lois Lane centric episodes in both seasons, and I think that's really important. The show is called Superman and Lois, and it actually is Superman and Lois, not just Superman. And we still get a lot of Superman. The show is giving you everything you want, and this is the Lois Lane from the comics. That's the only time we've ever gotten the Lois Lane from the comics. They don't care what the general audience thought she was from the Margot Kidder versions of the Superman 78, which, by the way, are great. They don't care your predispositions. They just give you Lois Lane from the comics. This is Lois Lane. I think that's the strength of the show because, again, it makes Clark who he is.
Yeah, definitely. She's been great, and it was like she is like a really great mom to watch too. Like the way she is with her kids and how she tries to be open with them, but yet, like you said, still stern, right? Like sometimes in these shows, the mom or the dad becomes too buddy with the kids that they don't have the line of "I'm your parent." And both of these, Clark and Lois, in this show are very good at drawing that line of, "No, you broke the rules, you're in trouble. I understand you were doing it for your girlfriend or for this or for that, but you broke the rules. You're going to have to be disciplined." And that is one of the strengths of the show, for sure. Is there a character we have not talked about yet?
We haven't talked about Lana at all.
Yes.
And the Cushings, who I think sometimes kind of take away from the show. And sometimes they help the show. It's really inconsistent. I think they're very inconsistent characters, especially because they have two daughters and we only ever see one. It's like a running gag of the show. It's almost like they know it.
Sophie's upstairs. Don't worry about her.
Yeah. It's almost like they know it. And I actually admire the fact that they caught on to that and they almost make fun of themselves in the writing of it. The Kyle is a very interesting character because he starts off as, I think he's your door to small town Americana. And I think you see how he was gullible for what Morgan Ed was selling, and there's some political stuff there that we don't really need to get into, but because it's not where the fun is. Lana and Clark having a very platonic best friend kind of relationship, that's pretty cool. It's actually got to be really hard for both of them, especially in season 2 when she learns that he's Superman. That's got to be. She's got to be like, he was Superman this whole time, like because she's known him longer than anybody. So what?
I picked the wrong guy, right? That's what.
Well, now actually, before season 2, she probably didn't think that.
Yeah.
Then Kyle is a jerk, the Cushings are really the only guys we missed, and sometimes the show misses them, so that's okay.
Well, I actually find Kyle much more interesting than Lana in this show, and I think Kyle is definitely one of my favorite characters. Like his journey, right? Like through season 1 of being like just a total jerk to coming around to learning that Morgan Edge was not great for Smallville. And they kind of reverse a little bit of that in season 2 because they just needed some more conflict. But
But season 2 killed his progression for me. He was on a progression,
Mhm.
and it completely killed it for me. I get where you're saying, where you go from hating Kyle to liking Kyle,
Yeah.
but they completely ruined it. So I'm just like, what do you want me to do with this guy? So that's my problem with Kyle. Lana to me is one of those characters that depends on the episode. Sometimes she brings a lot to the show. Sometimes she's just there.
Yeah. And sometimes they like, the Cushings are what they use to get some of the drama in if the other characters are not able. If all the characters are on the same page in the Kent family, the Cushings are not, right? Because they need some sort of drama. So
they need family drama in a family show.
Yeah. So they'll use them for the drama with Sarah. Like they'll use her for they'll use Lana being upset about Clark not showing up to something or Lois not showing up to like they'll use that stuff when the other characters are all on the same page of saving the world and they need somebody to be upset about something.
They're also a great vehicle for when Clark or Lois needs to talk about their partner in a way that actually makes sense without it like being like, dear journal, I'm mad at my husband.
Right. Yeah, because they won't talk to the kids about that. So
you
they
can't go to Jordan and say, your dad's a piece of shit.
Right.
So I think we hit on the characters. Is there anything else story-wise you want to hit on?
Well, one thing I really want to hit on is my favorite episode. So my favorite episode, and I feel like a lot of people's favorite episode, was episode 11, A Brief Reminiscence in Between Cataclysmic Events, which was the flashback episode for a good part of it. They do a little twist on it of it's not actually flashbacks. It's, Tal-Rho, like, putting something on Superman's head or, like, being able to get some of his memories so he can find more out about Clark and where to attack him with the children and all that. But this was really cool because for a while it just felt like I was watching a Superman, like the perfect Superman movie for me, of him being in Metropolis, him getting to fall in love with Lois and getting to see them getting, proposing and finding out the news of the kid, him taking down some villains. Like, it was just such a strong episode for me and gave me everything I wanted as a Superman fan.
Oh, it was the fan service episode, but it served a purpose too.
Yeah.
I'm going over the episodes. I was like, I have to pick a different favorite episode because this is going to be his favorite episode. I knew it. I called it 100% right. It's perfect. And what I love about it is it's Superman smashes the Klan to a T, which is one of the best, most heartwarming stories in DC Comics. If you haven't read Superman Smashes the Klan, stop what you're doing, put this on pause, come back. It's a quick read. It's great. But yeah, it was really good. I love that episode. I'm trying to think what my favorite episode is. Other than that, and I think it's the one where Jonathan goes into the van, John Henry Irons' van, and he almost dies, and Lois freaks out at him, and Lois is the backdrop of Lois's therapy session and the miscarriage, and you get a lot of world building with, oh my goodness, we almost had a Natalie on this earth.
Right.
And I think it adds so many layers of depth to the story that, and it finally gives you a purpose for Jonathan, because without that episode, I think that's a weak spot for the season. So I really liked that episode. I thought it was, again, very Lois centric, but you got so much good John Henry Irons stuff in there. You saw the, what happened on the other Earth, and Lois's demise on the other Earth, and Jonathan has to see that. Jonathan has to see his mom, married to another man, his mom die on TV. The trauma that Jonathan Kent goes through in that episode.
By his father. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it's just like the trauma that he goes through in that episode gets a little too glazed over. If I have one criticism of the episode, it's we're dealing with Lois's emotions, but Jonathan went through the rigor in that episode. But it's just, I think that one packed a punch. And I had to pick an episode that wasn't brief reminiscent or whatever it's called, because I knew that was going to be your favorite. I also really liked the season episode 13, where Clark turns, and the confrontation we talked about earlier with John Henry Irons. But I wanted to bring up that episode with John Henry Irons' band or truck or whatever it is, because we had already kind of talked about that other episode, and so that to me would be, those are my three favorites. I think they are the three that add all of the heart into the season, and it all feeds off of those three episodes.
I'll give a shout out to the pilot here as well, because I think it is one of the best, I guess, superhero pilots I've seen in quite a while, because it is so cinematic at times here, and it opening with like kind of a scene that we see in the flashback episode later, but with the Fleischer cartoon suit and him with the homage to Action Comics 1, where he is catching the green car. Just some really cool little nods there, and him telling the little boy that his mom made his suit and everything. Like, that is just exactly what I want from Superman. So I'll give a shout out to the pilot as probably my backup one.
I'll give you that one. I especially like the freeze breath in the water into the silo, and that to me shows you the creativity that you can use with the powers. It's not just, what I love about the show is it's not just punching people, and that's important because he's the most powerful person on the world. If it was just punching people, the episodes would be 3 minutes long. So yeah, that's a great pick. The episode season 1, I think we're all like, okay, we're sold. Let's go.
Yeah,
let's do this thing.
I remember like immediately watching that pilot and then like messaging my friends and family like, you got to watch Superman and Lois. Like, this show is so good.
I'm so frustrated. I watched the show with my mom. I'm 32, but I still live at home. But yeah, sue me. I'm a millennial. Anyway, I watched the show with my mom. I keep telling everyone in my family, I keep telling friends, gotta watch the show. And they all say, oh, that sounds pretty good. And then they never watch it. And I'm just like, and that's one of the reasons I think the show is, I'm worried about its future, because I don't see the rabid fan base. There's definitely fans. But I love the show. And it was really fun talking about it because, dude, I don't have anyone to talk about the show with.
Exactly. Like, my parents watch it, my wife watches it, but none of them are podcasters. None of them are going to get it.
Well, see, when you say, this is how a conversation with somebody who's not willing to have a conversation like this goes, or aren't good at that, right? They'll go, yeah, it was good.
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
good. What did you like about it? And it's like pulling teeth, trying to get it. And you feel like you're forcing them to do something they don't want to do.
Right.
They just want to enjoy the episode and kind of be done with it. Sometimes you get a good conversation, but when you have people who are willing to podcast about an episode of a TV show, that's when you get really good conversations. It's the same with football. It's like, I talk to football at work. It's like, half the time it's like that episode of Parks and Rec where Ron Swanson goes to Home Depot and goes, I know more than you.
Yes.
So it's really cool to talk about this with someone who really loves it. And when we come together and enjoy things in the nerddom, I think these properties win. These properties are doing what they're supposed to be doing. At the end of the day, it's a business. It's dollars and cents. But the creatives don't care. And the true creatives make art that we care about. And the fact that we are doing this podcast sells the entire purpose of a show like this, and all the podcasts about it, and all the interaction online on Twitter. the positive discourse anyway. It's the purpose of it all. It really is. The share.
All right. Anything else on season 1 here before we wrap it up?
I think we put a pretty good bow on everything. I just really appreciate the show. It's so wholesome. It's so good, and I just don't think there's another show on TV like it, and I don't know why that is. But there's not a show like this.
I would agree with that. I think, last year with all of the Disney Plus shows that came out and all of that, this one for me still stood out above all of those. And I'm a big MCU fan. I'm a big Marvel fan. I have another Marvel podcast as well as this. But the issue was that this one felt like a TV show, which some of those don't. And what I mean by that is episodic storytelling with still like a cinematic lens, right? Like the effects were good, the cinematography is good, but it's still a TV show where I get to watch more than 6 episodes and I get to watch 15 of them and have a longer form storytelling with it. So that was something that really won this, and just the family dynamic of it, where you're able to watch this with anyone is really great.
Yeah, the only other thing I'd like to say is the show had stakes, and you always felt like the bad thing could happen, and you didn't know how they were going to win at the end. And none of it was contrived, ironic. None of it was just there to be there. There's no filler in this. I thought they had a couple different endings, but there was no filler. It was really good writing. And on television, especially on a CW show, that has to be given a standing ovation. Just thank you for the entertainment, and thank you for the escape from the world we live in.
Right. Right, yeah. This is a good escape. Superman's always a great escape. If anybody has listened through this whole thing and they are interested in like they watch Superman and Lois, but they don't know where to read certain comics or whatever, I would say a really great Superman one that you can read without any sort of background is Superman for All Seasons. I read that by Jeff Loeb and art by Tim Sale. Yeah, and it is really great. And then I looked for it on trade paperback, and of course it was out of print, but they're coming out the Absolute Edition later this year, so
yeah, that is going to be a money pit for me because I am getting the Absolute Edition. I have the trade hardcover, but I'll give you another one. Superman American Alien.
Okay.
Really good. Really good. And then there's another one. Superman American Alien is kind of like Superman for All Seasons, just a different take on it. And then Superman Secret Identity is actually pretty good because it's kind of like this guy was named Clark Kent because his last name was Kent. His parents gave him all Superman stuff. And then he ends up getting powers, and it's basically Superman in the real world where Superman is a fictional character.
Okay.
So it's like, holy crap, there's a Superman, but he's already a fictional character. So it's that one's fun. So those are 2 recommendations for me. I don't think you can go wrong with Superman. If you read Superman, you're getting truth, justice, and the American way, all that good stuff. Superman Red Sun, when you've read a little more, is definitely one you have to read. But yeah, you should definitely read Superman comics because they're fun.
Yeah, and I just read for the first time yesterday Superman Inc., which is an Elseworlds tale. That was pretty cool. He's like he doesn't know he's an alien in that story. If people wanted to check that out, he becomes a star sports player, and he plays for like the NFL, the NBA.
That is an interesting take. I have to read that now. Okay, that is an interesting take I haven't read yet.
Yeah, and then it kind of all, not to spoil it too much, but he kind of ends up in the position where where Superman should be at the end of the tale, but he's got a different name because of not being found by the Kents and all that kind of stuff. So it's a really cool tale that I read yesterday on the DC Universe app. So
Okay, I'm gonna have to get on the app and read that. That sounds cool.
And if anybody wants to reach out to us here at Elseworlds, email elseworldsdcfan@gmail.com, or you can tweet us, Facebook us, or Instagram, all at elseworldsdcfan. I want to thank Chris for coming on to the show. Thanks for coming on and talking Superman and Lois with me.
Oh, absolutely. Shameless plug here. We have
Yeah.
a show. We have a show coming up at the end of January. Me and my friend Ronald Tooth are starting it. It's going to be called Multiversal Omnibus. We already have a Twitter page. You can go to @Multiversal Omni. We're doing some cool stuff like comic book of the day every day, chit chatting. That's kind of how we got in touch. And then yeah, so just check that out. Young up and coming show, you know. And also, if you like football, I'm at FootballMan58 on Twitter, and I write for Russell Street Report, which is a Baltimore Ravens blog. And if you don't like football, I got plenty of other nerd stuff coming for you, as I said. So I really appreciate the chance to come on here. And honestly, and I can't wait to talk about season 2.
Yeah.
But man, this was fun, and I really appreciate the chance to just talk Superman and Lois, man.
Awesome. Yeah. So we'll have you back on for season 2. Thank you all for listening, and we'll catch you next time.